everyone, my name is Rick with Bracket Technology. We're an IT consulting company based in Irvine, California, and we've decided to start a YouTube channel focused on helping computer users everywhere understand many of the basics of the IT world. And today we're going to be focusing on the home router. We'll kind of cover how it works and what it can do. We'll also walk through a Linksys device made by Cisco, as they kind of seem to be the most common routers for home users. Okay, home routers. What are they and what do they do? Home routers are the devices which allow your local internal devices, so your laptop, your desktop, iPad, iPod, tablet device, all those different things, allows them to access the internet through one internet connection. It also keeps the data separate and makes sure that the packets go to and from who they're supposed to on the network. Next piece is how they're connected. These devices, I'll show you the test one we're going to be using today is the Linksys. These devices are connected through multiple different ports. We'll start with this right here, the Ethernet, the 4 Ethernet ports. These are what are called a switch. The switch is built into the router, which allows it to have direct plugins from your desktop, or maybe you have a printer or something that's network capable. You plug it directly in there and it allows access through the internet. Now next to those ports you have your internet port here, which can also be called a WAN port, which is short for wide area network. And when you have a internet connection or internet service provider, be it AT&T, Verizon, any cable company, something like that, they're going to provide a modem. And then from that modem, there's going to be an Ethernet cable, which looks like a big phone cable. And those are the cables that plug into all these here. But the Ethernet cable that comes from the modem is going to plug into this internet port right here. And that's what gives this router control and access to the internet. Now also you have your obviously your power, your on and off switch, and the reset button. Now the reset button you're going to kind of want to have as a last ditch effort if your router's functioning improperly or there's something wrong with it. You can use like the tip of a pen or a paper clip to push in there. When the device is on, you hold it in there for about 10 seconds. There's a little button inside, and what it'll do is lights will flash and it'll reset it to factory default. Basically it'll set it exactly how it was when you first purchased the device. Alright, so next we'll go over how they're accessed and configured. Most of these devices, when you purchase them, they're going to come with a quick start guide. Now in that quick start guide, it'll give you two pieces of information that are pretty important. One is the default IP address. In most cases, that default IP address is going to be 192.168.1.1 or .0.1. And the username and password, username is generally going to be admin, or maybe the name of the device, Netgear, D-Link, whatever it is. And then the password is going to be either admin or the word password or the name of the device. So for our purposes here, we will come up here and we will type in 192.168.1.1, which is our router for the example today. Username of admin and the password, and we are in. So this is the backbone or the inside of the router. This is a web interface essentially. Now in order to get to this, or in order to have access to this, you're going to want to plug in to one of these 4 ports right here, and that'll give you access to the web interface on this router. Now back to this device here, we'll go over a couple different pieces. I'm not going to go through the entirety of this device. I'm going to go through kind of the main things that'll help you get your internet set up, your wireless set up and protected, and how to back up and factory reinstall if needed. So we come through here. Language, I'm using English. You can use whichever language. I don't know how many languages they have. It's quite a few. Automatic configuration, or DHCP. The internet setup, most of the time with home users, you're going to have a DHCP internet connection. The ISP, which is your Time Warner or AT&T, they are going to provision you or give you an IP address that is allowed to go on the internet and do whatever it needs to do. Now, they automatically give that to you and they can change it at any time. The other options are static IP, which means they give you an IP address that never changes. This is generally used when you want to have stuff on your local network accessible from the outside, from the internet. And then there's PPoE and all these other pieces. PPoE is like if you have an internet connection that you need to sign into, you have a username and password in order to use it. That is slowly going away, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. The host name and domain name, we probably won't ever need to use in a local network. Host name is what you actually want the router to be called, and then the domain name is if you have an internal domain. Most people do not. The router IP, local IP address. This is going to be the IP address that you want your local network to have. So by default, it's the 192.168.1.1, and that's how we got into this router. Now we can change it to whatever we'd like to. There are a couple internally routable IP schemes. What I'd recommend is I'd leave it as it is. The only number I'd recommend changing, if you did want to and you want a little bit more security or a little bit harder to figure out what your network drive or your network setup is, you can change this network, this number here. This number could be anything from 1 to 254. Now, you'll want to keep this subnet mask. Getting into IP subnetting is a whole other thing that I can spend days on end going over. But for this example, we're going to leave it as 1.1, and that'll be the internal IP address on the router. Now, DHCP server, which is default enabled, is going to be what's handing out the IP addresses. Now, it's kind of like the internet service provider, your Time Warner or whatever, hands out you an IP address so that you can get on the internet. You, on this router, are going to hand out IP addresses to your internal devices, your laptop, desktop, iPad, those things, so that they can get on the internet. Now, there's a couple different options here. There's a maximum number of users. How many people do you want to have allowed to get on the internet at the same time? This keeping defaults is generally a good idea, just because you're probably not going to have more than 50 people in your house on the internet at the same time. If you do, you'll need to get in here and update this number. Starting off at 100 is fine. That's kind of a common number to start off on. The DNS stuff. DNS servers. Well, a quick little intro on what DNS does. It gets a lot bigger than this, but DNS changes the name of the website to an IP address. So when you go to the internet and you type in www.google.com, your computer doesn't really know where that is or what that is. So what it does is it goes to a DNS server and it says, hey, I'm looking for google.com. And that DNS server goes, oh, well, if you want to do google.com, this is the IP address you need to go to. And then you go to that IP address. And that's what DNS, for the most part, that's all you probably really need to know right now about DNS. Now, the DNS that I have in here is 8.8.8.8, which is easy to remember, and it's also Google's DNS. And then 4.2.2.1, which I believe is Verizon and maybe AT&T, I'm not sure. But I generally use those two. Sometimes your ISP recommends that you use theirs. Sometimes they have it set up where you have to use theirs, and they will give that information to you. But if you're automatically pulling from DHCP, a lot of times they'll package that in there, and you can't even make any changes on this information here. Then obviously your time zone, you'll want to set your time zone. So that is the basic setup. That is what is going to get you onto the internet and get any devices that plug in to get onto the internet. All right, so next we'll go over wireless and how that is set up. Most of the time wireless is going to come in different modes. What those modes are, and I'll drop down here, you can see, is different frequencies in which they broadcast the wireless signal for internet. G, B, N, they're all different signals. N is the newest. It's the fastest. It's the strongest. It's coming with most devices now. The reason that there's multiple other ones is because some of the older laptops and devices, they may have worked off of G or even B. Now, those devices, you still want to have the ability to get them on the internet if needed. So what I do is I generally do mixed, which allows anything that is trying to connect wirelessly to connect through. The network name, or SSID, is what I want people to see when they try to connect to the internet, to the wireless internet in my home. So they're going to see Bracket. It's my last name. It's what they're going to double click on, and it's going to ask for a password, which will set up the security in a second here. But you can have this be whatever you want, essentially. The SSID broadcast, you can have that display or not display. Some people would rather nobody be able to see their network and only they know that it says Bracket. That's just something that they know. I recommend having it enabled because once it's secured, even if people see it, they can't connect to it. So if we go to wireless security here, it'll take us over to this page here. Now, if we look at the different security modes, there's WEP, WPA, WPA Enterprise. There's all kinds of information there that, we'll need to know what they are and why we'd even use them. I'm going to recommend using WPA2 Personal because it's the strongest encryption for wireless that you can use right now. WEP stands for Wired Equivalent Privacy. So it's kind of like as if you were wired in, but it's still minimal security and it's kind of easily hacked. Some people can actually hack it within about 10 minutes. WPA is Wi-Fi Protected Access, and it has improved encryption and algorithms to keep it from being hacked. And then WPA2 is kind of the latest, greatest Wi-Fi Protected Access 2, the sequel, and it's government grade encryption and algorithms. So it's, what the government uses. It's just the current standard. So what you'll do is you'll create your passphrase here. Encryption, you can use either just AES or TKIP or AES. I don't want to get into what those encryptions do or why one may be better than the other. I generally use both or, either or. So that way if somebody's trying to connect with this, they can connect. Someone's trying to connect with that, they can connect. Create my passphrase, save my settings, and then your internet is now secured. Now it's going to look a little different in different routers, but the concept is there. Another piece that I want to go over is basic administration and the backup of the configuration. So in here, you can come in, you can change your router password from that admin to default. Because otherwise, if somebody somehow gets on, they can get in there, they can get into this device, they can change all kinds of information, and it's a pain in the butt to take care of. So you can do the new passwords. You can change how access is enabled. You can have it via just wireless or not wireless, or from outside through the internet or not through the internet. There's all different combinations you can get right here. And then also the backup of the configuration. You can back up the configuration to your computer. So in the event something happens to your device, maybe it completely breaks and you have to take it in and you get a brand new device and you're like, man, I really wish I didn't have to go through and set all that up again. Well, you can back up your configuration, and if something like that happens, next time you bring this thing up, you log into the default, you go restore configuration, and it'll put all the settings that you've already created back in there. Then this is just if you want to do a soft reboot. It's just restarts the system, doesn't delete any files or anything like that. But there's also generally factory defaults is going to be somewhere in the device. This will restore all settings. It's kind of like that little red reset button that we talked about earlier. And it resets a device to factory defaults to the way you got it when you first purchased it. So I hope this was informative for you guys. I hope you learned something, or it sparked some interest to learn a little bit more. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave a message for us. You can check us out at our website, and you can follow us on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn. We're all over the place, and we're here to help.